Talking today with Mr. John Kennaugh of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay. Now, John, can you start us off with some background? And to begin with, where and when were you born?
Well, I was born in Rockford, Illinois, and that was March 4, 1923.
All right. And did you grow up in Rockford or did you move?
After 3 years, we moved to Belvedere, Illinois, and I lived there until 1935, and that was where I grew up as a kid.
All right.
Went from I was in Belvedere, then we moved to Dixon, Illinois in 35, and that's where I grew up as a kid.
All right. Now, what did your family do for a living?
We moved to Dixon because my dad was able to get a job at the Freeman Shoe Company, but he didn't like that kind of work, and he decided to go on his own, and he was an electrician, and he was a washer repair serviceman, did his own thing.
Okay. And how many children were in your family?
2. I have a younger brother of 5.5 years.
Okay. All right. And then, did you finish high school?
Yes, Dixon, Illinois High School.
Okay.
And that was in 1941.
All right. And then what did you do after you finished high school?
Went to work with an engineering company and did land surveying until I went into the service. And then I went into service in 43.
Okay. Now, how did you learn about Pearl Harbor?
While in Dixon, I was a member of the Illinois Reserve Militia. They took the place of the National Guard when the National Guard went into federal service.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had access to the Armory.
Mm-hmm.
And we were playing basketball in the Armory when we got kicked out. That's how I heard about it.
All right. Tell me a little bit about the Reserve Militia. What did you do with them?
We drilled, and I became a drill instructor. On 2 occasions we went out on duty. One was a train wreck there outside of Dixon, and I was posted in the mail car, and they locked me in. I don't know where they took me, but they took me someplace, and finally I got out, but that was the first line of duty we had. And then another line of duty was to go over to Savannah, where the bridge crosses the Mississippi, and we guarded the Illinois side to make sure that the cars didn't have guns and munitions and whatever. Those are the 2 duties we had.
All right. Now, how often would you drill or train?
Once a week.
Okay. All right. And did they pay you for this?
No.
Okay, so just volunteer service?
It was a volunteer.
All right. Now, did you consider going ahead and enlisting after Pearl Harbor?
I considered it. My answer was no.
Okay.
Because I was expecting to go to college under the GI Bill.
Mm-hmm. All right. So but you just decided to wait and let them draft you?
Yes.
Okay. And then when did you get your draft notice?
I don't recall.
Okay.
It was
so early 43?
I don't know what the process was. They went by the numbers, and when my number came up, that's when I got called.
All right. Because I guess so you reported for duty in February of 43?
Yes.
Right.
Because of my background with the Illinois Reserve Militia and my drilling that I had with the Drum and Bugle Corps for the American Legion, my responsibility, we were living in Dixon. We had to get on the train and go to Chicago. It was my responsibility to get that group organized and to get from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the leader of that. First time I was ever a leader of the group.
All right. And then what did they do when you got to Chicago?
Physical. We didn't take any tests or anything. I think it was just for a physical to make sure that we were eligible.
Okay. Now, were they passing everyone then? Or were there people who were being weeded out?
I only know what I did.
Okay. All right. And then where did they send you for basic training?
Camp Grant, Illinois, in Rockford, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my dad went through World War II.
Or World War One?
Or World War One.
Yeah.
He
Mm-hmm.
came out through there, World War One.
Mm-hmm.
I went through there when I went in, and I came through there when I came out, but it no longer exists now.
Right. All right. And when you got to basic training, did you have any advantage there because you knew how to drill?
Yes. We were out on the drill field, and our sergeant asked if there's anybody had any drilling experience. Well, my buddies knew that I had from our conversations, so they yelled out my name.
Mm-hmm.
And so he called me forward, and he didn't like my beard. He referred to Abe Lincoln, and that I should take that off. But he asked me to go through the movement of drilling, and I was able to do what he wanted to do. And when we got through that period, he wanted me to stay on, and I said, no, I want to go where the work is.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, aside from drilling, what else did you do in basic training?
Well, as I recall, we were still not called to go into full service,
Mm-hmm.
but we were on standby, and we were involved in building. Most of the GIs were in tents, and they were converting from tents to tents being on platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And shelters, and we were involved in constructing those until we got moved.
Mm-hmm. All right. And how long did your training last?
I don't remember.
Okay.
We also dug trenches for pit stops, and we were also taken to another town to help move material for a hospital and odds and ends like that. It really wasn't training, but they were taking advantages of our presence.
Right. Okay. So, do you know? I mean, how long do you think you stayed at Camp Grant?
Camp Grant?
Yeah. How long were you there?
I think only 2 or 3 days. We went through some. I'm not sure of the time, but we went through some training material on syphilis and
Okay.
those kinds of films, and they really laid it on us that we need to take care of ourselves.
Right. Okay. So you went from Chicago to Camp Grant.
But at Camp Grant, I also took some written exams,
Mm-hmm.
tests, and I got 136 out of 150, and so that put me into a special category when I got into service.
Right. Okay. So from Camp Grant, where did you go next?
To St. Petersburg,
Okay.
and we were put up in a hotel there for a short time. We drilled out on the streets, and then we got moved out to what they call Tent City, and this was located on a golf course, and of course the golf course is pretty sandy, and it got pretty cold out there sometimes. Had to wait until 10 o'clock for the sun to really shine down to get us warm. This was in February,
Mm-hmm.
so quite an experience.
All right. So that was where you were doing your basic training.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And now, were all of the men there, were they going to be in the Army Air Forces, or?
So far as I know, they were.
Yeah. Okay. Now, were you training just to be ground crew, or were there people who were going to go into flight training?
I was trained stateside in Utah, in Texas, in Iowa, And I didn't realize at the time what I was being trained for. But come to find out, when I got overseas, the squadron that I went into were trained to be the ground forces people who could maintain planes, who could maintain a new acquired base. And so when a squadron of planes came out, we could maintain those planes until their ground crews came forward.
Okay.
Because at that time, the Japanese were at the point of almost getting into India. They had covered Burma, and they were on the borders of India. And prior to my getting there, they were occupying bases behind the lines, and our squadron would go in and maintain that temporary base until the old squadron came forward. Then we'd be available for another one. But by the time I got there, that kind of an exercise didn't happen anymore, and so we had a lot of freedom when I got over there.
All right. Tell me some more about your training experience. You did the basic training in Florida with the first drilling and that
Yes.
kind of thing. And then where did you go after St. Petersburg?
I don't remember the exact courses. One was in handling bombs, handling fuses. One was taking training in as a ordnance person. Part of our duty was also with a motor pool, and so we had to take some training in how to maintain the truck, and if emergency came up, what would we do in a case of emergencies. And I was trained to drive any vehicle up to a 2.5 ton truck.
Okay. And where did you learn that?
I don't remember which base it was.
All right. You said you were in Utah,
Well, I
in
was
Iowa.
at Texas. Probably is in Texas when I did in the truck driving. And while there, during that training period, I was on a couple of convoys being shipped up and be sent up to the source of the new trucks, and we would drive the new trucks back to base. We were wasn't training, we were actually doing it after having been trained.
Right. Okay. And what do you remember what you were doing when you were in Utah?
Well, we played basketball when we got there. I think that was where I was getting training on how to handle bombs and fuses, and how to prepare them, how to dearm them. I think it was up in Utah.
Okay. And then what did you do in Iowa?
Iowa was that was the last base before going to our point of departure, and I was responsible for drilling our own people. I was also responsible for training our people on fuses and bombs, and I was an instructor at that time.
Okay.
And that's where I got my corporal rating.
All right. Now, do you remember when it was that you got your orders to go overseas?
No, I don't remember.
How long do you think you'd been in training?
Year and a half.
Okay. So we're kind of getting now into the middle of 1944?
Yes.
All right. Now, did you get any leave time? Did you get to go home?
Yes.
And was that right before?
Yeah, I remember a couple of train rides, but I don't remember any particular details.
Right.
But they were.
Okay.
We had leave time.
All right. Now, what kind of now, did you train with the same group of men the whole time, or did you get a different group at each new place?
I don't know how I was associated with the others. I wasn't aware that any of us were going together.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until, I think it was when we were in Iowa, that we finally became one group. But I didn't know that there isn't anybody that went with me all the way through
Okay.
all the training. I don't remember that. It didn't work that way.
All right. But in Iowa, basically, that's kind of where your group comes together, and probably that's why you're drilling them and getting ready.
Well, that was my background
Right.
of doing the drilling, so
Right.
it was just killing time,
Okay.
really. We departed from California. I don't remember the name of the departure base, but we also had to do some drilling there just to keep us
Mhm.
busy. But it was at a time of year when the fog was right down on the ground, but we had to go out there anyway. Well, when the sun came out and broke the fog, half of our group had already gone to the PX. It was funny, but they were just keeping us busy
Right. Okay. Now, did you go by sea or did you fly?
by sea.
All right. And what kind of ship were you on?
It was a transport ship. Offhand, I don't remember the name of it, but we were 33 days on sea. Went down around Australia. We stopped there for one day. We didn't get off. Then we went on it, and they took us to Bombay, India.
All right. Now, about how many men do you think were on the ship?
No idea.
Well,
It was a cargo ship. I mean it was a personnel ship.
Okay.
Not I don't know. There were a lot of GIs on it.
Right. Okay. Now, did the ship sail in a convoy or by itself?
So far as I know, we were by ourselves.
Okay.
But we did a lot of zigzagging all the way across.
Okay. And then, how did you spend your time for those 33 days?
We played a lot of cards, and being down on the hold, well, we had to go by the lights that was down on our deck. And when it got to be, I think it was 10 o'clock, they turned the bright lights off, and the red lights showed, and you couldn't read our cards. So we had to quit playing that. We just had to go to bed.
All right. Now, what was the weather like?
The only thing I remember about the weather is that we were through one storm that the ship must have been heading into the waves, because you could feel the ship go up and then it would drop.
Mm-hmm.
And that was interesting. It didn't we didn't end up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't drop that fast, but we could feel that when that ship came back down.
And were the men getting seasick?
I don't recall seasickness.
Okay. All right. And did you get to spend much time on deck?
Not very much time.
Okay.
There were too many. They couldn't all be on deck at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't recall what the schedule was, but it wasn't very often.
All right. So 33 days, you get to Bombay, then what happens?
They dropped us off at the docks, and that was the first time we got a mail call. I don't know how many pieces of mail I got. Must have been 3 dozen. I mean, it was a lot. And it was really a welcome thing to see, and I think all of us had tears in our eyes when that happened. But then after we'd been there, then they put us on a train. We went from Bombay to Ninga airbase, about 100 miles west of Calcutta. The train was an interesting train in that the restroom that they had was not a restroom. It was just a little cubicle area with a hole in the ground, and you use that while you were en route.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that was different, that we, while going along the train, at these different stops, the number of people, number of Indians, bakshis, all looking for help,
Mm-hmm.
carrying babies, and we would, one of the things that we did was take our cup and go up to the engine where it was when we were stopped, it was letting, releasing the water pressure.
Mm-hmm.
We could make coffee out of that, out of that water. Played a lot of cards. It was it wasn't an enclosed train,
Mm-hmm.
covered train, but not enclosed. So I don't remember how long it took us to go across India. I'm sure it took overnight, but I don't remember that.
Right. Okay. And were you surprised by what you saw, or was it different from anything you'd seen before?
Well, we were surprised at what the Indians looked like,
Mm-hmm.
and it was different seeing all these beggars out. The housing that we could see from the train was something we'd never seen before, so it was a new country for us.
All right. And then when you got to the base at Ninga, did you set up there, or did you go someplace else?
That was my base. Could say for how long. It was a good-sized base. Our quarters were on one side of the base, and the outdoor theater was on the other side, and so we'd go every night and go to the movie. And one thing that was unusual was that 2 nights in a row, clear sky, moon was blue. I'd have to go over that area to get haircuts, and I was growing a handlebar mustache at the time, and the Indian barbers, they really admired somebody that could have handlebars, and so they took good care of me.
All right. Now, what sort of work were you doing there?
Waiting to go in duty. We had, by the time I got there, as I said earlier, that our particular services were not needed. So we played baseball in the middle of the day, even though it was 120 degrees out. All the Indians they had better sense than we did, but we did what we had to do. One of the things that I did while there is, after having gone to town to buy some, or Calcutta to buy some stuff to send home, got back to the base, and we couldn't send a bundle greater than 10 pounds. So I contrived a beam balance and used my quart of water for determining the weight and distance, determined the amount of weight so I could stay within the 10-pound limit, and it worked out fine.
All right. Now, the base you were on, were there British troops there, or were they all Americans, or?
I can't say for sure.
Okay.
I can't say that there were British, but I don't know that.
Were there other American units there, or was it just you?
It was a pretty good-sized base, yes.
Okay.
Different squadrons were there.
Okay. Did they fly bombers out of there, or?
I don't know for sure.
Okay.
And while we had to have a Atibrine a day. That's a pill that keeps you. It doesn't cure malaria, but it prevents you from the side effects.
Right.
And so we had to be on Atibrine every day until we left the country.
All right. After staying on that base for a while, what was your next assignment?
We had one assignment. This was our ordnance group, about 10 of us, that we were sent down to Cox's Bazaar, where a ship had unloaded munitions on a dock, and we were part of moving the munitions to a new munitions dump, because the British were getting ready to advance onto Akab, where the Japanese were,
Mm-hmm.
and only to find out that after we got the dump set up, the British didn't have to go to Akab at all. Japanese had already left.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the first job that we had, and we were there several days, stayed in what we call bashes. They're pole structures with straw roof on, and I don't recall what was on the side, but this is where we stayed, and we ate their food. We didn't have anything to do there but just stay there, and a friend of mine, that we both became corporals when we were in Iowa, and when we got to that Casas Bazaar, we needed to get two trucks in shape so that we could use to pull the trailers in order to move the bombs, etc. And so we were responsible for getting that, because we were motor pooled, so
Mm-hmm.
to speak.
And you said you were eating their food. Were you eating British food or Indian food?
British food.
Okay.
And they served good food.
Okay.
We had good food. One experience I never intended to ever get involved in was when on Christmas Eve, our people were invited by different British groups to celebrate with them. Well, there were three of us that were together that was in the bash up. We were playing cards, and somebody finally came and contacted us about going back with them. We did, but I had not been a drinker, but I was going along with the boys, and that was the one time in my life that I got drunk. Not proud of that, but that's what happens.
Did the experience convince you that you had been right? It was better not to get drunk?
No, I've been exposed to liquor. My dad used to make homebrew beer all the time, and he'd have me test it out, but I was never a drinker, so to speak. And the fellows knew that I didn't drink. In fact, coming back from one of our trips, we were on the train, and everybody was, it was after VJ Day, and everybody had a bottle of beer, and I had said something to somebody that, no, I'm not going to have anything until VJ Day. Well, VJ Day came along, and this guy came up here, you said, and I did, only to my regret, because another fellow came by, and he said, John, I never thought I'd see you doing that. So you never know how you make an impression on people.
All right. Now to get back up a little bit, so did you spend most of your time in India at the base at Ninga, and then just go out a couple of times, or did you change bases eventually?
Well, I wasn't called to duty again, but I found out that there was a need to work with the Piper Cub pilots who were removing wounded from the front lines in Burma. And in Burma, there's a mountain range that goes down the center, and so there was a front on each side of that range. And I volunteered to work with those pilots, and I set up the camp, got the food, prepared the water for washing, and got supplies for the chef, and I went down that. I did that 3 or 4 different times. the last time that I was down there, the pilot took me down to our next base, which would have been at Rangoon. And when we got down there, the pilot wanted to make a sharp turn for some reason or other, and when he made the turn, his engine stopped. Come to find out, he had not switched on the second tank,
Mm-hmm.
and we landed on a blacktop road, which was empty, fortunately, but we landed all right, but then our right strut hit the edge of the road, and it swerved our plane off. We ran into a cemetery wall, so it broke up the prof, but we didn't get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But we never did set up a camp down there because the Japanese had already evacuated.
All right. Now, when that plane crash landed, what did you do once you got out of the plane?
I just hung on. He did a good job of landing. It was pretty much as far as I can recall, it was a 3-point landing. So he did a good job, and it was under control until he got hit the edge of the road.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But then after that, how did you get back to your unit?
I don't remember. That seems strange. I don't remember how we got back. I don't know how we got relieved,
Mm-hmm.
but got back, and so I had nothing to do, and I heard something about our transport squad, cargo squadron, needing somebody to go up into China. So I volunteered to go, and they took me, and I went into a different group. And when we got up, we went up into, we made one stop near Kunming. And while in Kunming, this is a regular airbase for us. And it was a nice, calm place, nice woodsy area. And I got nosy, and I went out and walked around in the woods. I like to hike. While I was out there, I heard a zing and then a bang, and there was a Chinese soldier down maybe 300 feet from where I was, maybe even farther than that. But I heard that, and I was wearing a white T-shirt. Well, the first thing I did is I stripped off that T-shirt, and I circled around, and I got back to camp without any harm. So then went from there up to Xi'an, China, and that's in the northern central part of China.
Mm-hmm.
And the air base is right near Xi'an, is Xi'an. And I got to there, moved up there, and no sooner had I gotten there than we learned that one of the Transport Squadron planes had crashed, and so I went to headquarters and told them that I'm available if they need anybody for recovery. Well, lo and behold, I was selected to go, and our medical doctor and the head of the pilots, the three of us with an interpreter, we spent, I think it was 7 days making that trip. We were driven up to the first mountain range. We had to park our vehicle in a little Chinese village, and they kept us overnight in this one house. I'll call it a house. Our bed was over a fireplace. Well, that's not too bad, and be nice to keep the bed warm, but they didn't use chimneys. So it was a little bit difficult getting any sleep that night. But we got up into, we went over one mountain range, and then we had to climb the second mountain range where the plane was crashed. When we got to when we were approaching the last stop, at noon we decided we better have a good meal because we don't know what we're going to run into when we get to the village. So we had a good meal, and one thing about eating like that out I don't think that they had ever seen a white man where we were.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime we'd open a can and have an empty can, the kids, and they could use that, and
Mm-hmm.
we made friends with the kids. Kind of hard to make friends with the adults,
Mm-hmm.
but we can make friends with the kids. And we had our meal. When we got to the end of our journey that day, come to find out, we had a welcoming committee. And the head of the military, the head of the village, they were there waiting, welcoming us. And as we were going on into the village, here were 2 rows of Chinese boys. One row of Chinese boys that were waving a Chinese flag, homemade flags. And the other row on the other side was waving American flags. That was something to behold. And we got into the village, got set up, only to find out that they had a meal waiting for us, a 12-course meal. So we begged off for a little more time before eating, which they agreed to. And it was interesting eating that meal. We had to use chopsticks. And so it was 12 course, but one course was nuts and another course was other light edible foods. Mm-hmm. But what we didn't realize at first was that we would eat, everything was on our plate, but then we were alerted to the custom that when you're through eating, leave something on the plate. Well, I'm glad that happened because the rest of our meal was really something to behold. Excellent meal we had. The next, we were there 2 nights, and we slept on sawhorses with a makeshift bed, and we could hear the rats roaming around, and they didn't bother us, but they were there. We headed up then to where the plane was. Come to find out, when we got there, the plane had belly flopped on the peak of the mountaintop, like that. And the cabin broke loose, and the 7 GIs flew out through the opening, across the other side of that peak, and the pilot and co-pilot were still in the plane.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was our responsibility to recover those bodies and identify them and put them in body bags, and it took most of the day to do that. The military had posted guards around that planes so that there was no pilfering,
Mm-hmm.
and that was interesting. They had taken care of us that way. When we got back to the village, well, while we're up there at the crash area, there were 9 mule skinners, each with a mule, and each one took one of these bodies and they were going to haul the bodies back to our base.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have anything to do with them. But before they did that, the bodies were taken down into the village, and they had a 3-wall bamboo curtain on 3 sides, and the 9 GIs were 3 across, 3 deep, and they had a worship table in front of the GIs, and they had a service there, and they offered their form of prayer that if, if it was written on their kind of paper, but it was burned so that their prayer would go to their gods. And our captain, he offered a prayer on behalf of our side. And then the mule skinners, they took the bodies back to the base. And then that night, the second night we were there, we talked our host to let us serve them from our food supply,
Mm-hmm.
and not use chopsticks. That was an interesting experience. One thing about that 12-course meal, they had small cups like a thimble, and it was filled with some kind of alcohol. I don't know what kind, corn liquor, whatever it was. And one of the hosts started with a toast.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as they put the cup down, somebody came around, filled up those cups, and I don't know how many of those we drank that night, but it was very helpful with that heavy meal.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that was really enjoyable. I've always wanted to go to one of our local restaurants to see about duplicating that meal so we could entertain our family, but it's never worked out yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, it would be kind of hard to know what exactly it was they were feeding you, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now, when you went up to the crash site, did you just walk up, or could you drive? Or
We were walking. No, that was
Yeah.
all climbing.
Mm-hmm.
And one place where we climbed, we had to walk along a very narrow ridge that you had to hug the wall in order to get over to the other side. And nobody got hurt or anything, but it was not a short hike. It took, I didn't time it, so I don't know what. Must have taken a couple of hours to get up there. So we did a lot of climbing to get up there. And that plane was really flattened out.
And was it difficult to actually get up to the cockpit where that was?
To get in the.
Yeah.
I can't. Well, I wasn't involved in that part of it, so I don't
Okay.
know how it was. I was working on the slope.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then, so once you finish that, then you have to drive back to Xi'an or your base. Did you?
Well, we had to backtrack just the way we did when we went up there.
Right.
And nothing exciting happened. One enjoyable thing that happened was we were by a stream on where the truck was parked. There was a stream there, and we were able to take off our shoes and dangle our feet on that cold stream.
Mm-hmm.
And after having done all that walking, it really was a pleasure. One of the problems I ran into going toward the plane, this was going over the first mountain range to the second one. The sole of my heel, of my shoe, started to flap. So what I had to do was I shortened my shoestring so I'd have a stretch of rawhide, and I put a notch across my heel so that I could put that rawhide in there and then tie it around my ankle. And that's the way it went for the rest of the time we were there. And it worked out.
Okay. Okay.
Then when we got back, I was surprised when the doctor at our base gave me a half a bottle of liquor, and that didn't interest me, but the fellows in the tent that I was sleeping in, they really appreciated it. And I was surprised to learn too, the next day I found on the bulletin board that I became a sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
So from that point on, it was all slow going. The war, the VJ Day had somewhere along there had
Mm-hmm.
come along, and so we were biding our time until our number came up before we could be shipped homeward.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you still in China at that point, or had you gone?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't remember, it was on a C-54 that we were on. That was a huge ship, and I don't have any details about being in it, how long we were in it. I just don't have any recollection. It seemed like I'd remember stuff like that, but I didn't. I got home.
Did you fly back to India, or did you fly out across the Pacific, or?
We shipped homeward
Mm-hmm.
on the ocean.
Okay.
And the reason I remember that is when we got to the land side, got to the base where we're in California, they had a buffet, huge
Mm-hmm.
buffet, all kinds of food. You could eat anything you wanted, as much as you wanted. You could have died there
Mm-hmm.
while eating all that food. That was one thing I remember after we landed.
Yeah. What do you think you missed most about food you could get at home? Was there stuff you could not get in India or China that you got when you got back home?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, you said you could eat anything you want at this point.
From that,
Right.
yeah.
Right. But while you were in India or China,
Oh,
what did you miss? What did you not get to have that you wanted?
fresh eggs,
Mm-hmm.
ice cream. When we were walking across the mountains, our doctor would not let us eat anything from the ground.
Mm-hmm.
If we see vegetables, we couldn't touch any of that.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't, we were careful about using the water.
Mm-hmm.
We had to purify our water. If the water was coming out of the side of the mountain, he would let us use that kind of water. I don't have a good answer for your question.
Okay. No, that was good. All right. Now, are there other things about the time you spent in India or in China that kind of stand out in your memory? Or if you think back to what it was like to live in those places, what else do you remember about it?
Well, while we were biding our time in India, as I say, we were playing baseball, middle of the afternoon. One thing I remember about that was I was running into home plate. Of course, the catcher, he was blocking the plate. Well, my duty was to get him off base, and I did a flip over the top of him. I got a strawberry on my shoulder, and what was surprised about how I was treated, they didn't bandage it at all. They just put powder on it and let it build its own crust.
Mm-hmm.
Never had anything like that before. I want to go back to a couple of other things that come to my mind. When we were in our training stage, Well, one of the things that we did is we prepared 100-pound bombs. They were dummy bombs that would be used by the pilots for practicing. And we fill those with sand and then haul those out to the planes.
Mm-hmm.
We were ordnance, so all we did was haul the bombs to the plane. Then another group handled the actual loading of those on the planes. One of the things we made was the bullets that were on the plane were in metal linked that locked together, and we had a rack where we could put these links out. We could shove a bullet in and make a belt out of them, and then we would put those in a box about this long, about that high, and we would stack those. And there was a contest on how high we could do that. Well, I did it one time, and it was almost to the top of where the last one did, but it slipped off, and I got a gash, not a big gash, but I got injured from the hip doing that. But that was just part of the training.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, when you were in India and in China, were you always at some distance from the actual war? I mean,
I was always at a distance from it, but when I was in Burma, I was actually in the combat zone, but I wasn't where the actual fighting was occurring. Right. In fact, I didn't hear any of the fighting going on. I don't know how close that the pilot's camp was from the fighting area. Of course, they needed to be back where it was safe.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that the pilots were concerned about is here they were flying these planes and they didn't have any protection. So they asked if there's something I could do about that. It's for when I went to get supplies, what I was able to do is, if I went at the right time of day, it'd be in the afternoon, the major or whoever is in charge of the food area. I forget the name of it. He'd always have me have tea with him because that was a favorite pastime. So we got acquainted, and I asked about the possibility of getting boxes of hand grenades from him, and I was able to do that. And so the pilots really appreciate that when they had something they could throw back.
All right. So now the officer that you were working with, was that a British officer having tea?
At the
supply depot or
supply depot, British,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And so, how much contact did you have with any of the British personnel?
Not a whole lot, but in one of our camps, we had a cook was brought in from the British, and he was a good cook, and we welcomed that. But we didn't have a whole lot of. Well, when I was in Cox's Bazaar, they were all British, so I had that contact with them. One of the experiences I had down at Cox's Bazaar was that in hauling those munitions from the dock to the munitions site, I was driving along the pavement only to find out that I was in the wrong place, and one of the pilots, a British pilot, when he landed, he had to turn off to the side in order not to run into me. I never got reprimanded for that, but it's one of those things you run into.
All right. And you mentioned a little bit having some contact with some of the Chinese people. When you were on the bases in India, did you see many Indians? Did you work with them at all? Or did they provide services for you?
Well, in really the only contact we had in India, where when we stepped in our own bashes, we had houseboys that took care of our things, and they must have really made a lot of money because but that was the closest contact I had with the Indians. There was one time working in the motor pool, I had occasion to take a Jeep and go out on a country road, and as I was returning to the base, I came on a string of carts that the Indians were driving their mules, and they were on the right-hand side of the road, and I was going to pass them, only to find out, but I gave them a warning that I was coming, but as soon as I gave that warning, that whole group came over on the correct side of the road.
Right. All right. Now, okay, so we got you went to India, you went to China, and then you got to sail back home again. So you took a boat, and then you got back to California and so forth. Now, after you landed in the States again, did you get discharged right after that, or did you stay in service for a while longer?
No, when they tried to convince me to stay on, but I wanted to go to college, so I begged off. When I don't remember my trip back home. I went through Camp Grant, and when I got home, which was February the 8th, I was surprised to see on a small table like this a Christmas tree. Really sad looking Christmas tree. But my folks had kept it up for me until I got home. They knew when I was coming home. One thing that I had worked out with my folks before I left is a code system that I used to let them know where I was. Because once we were bound overseas, all of our mail was edited, censored. The code that was used was a capital letter of names of people. And so when I would write a letter home, I'd tell my folks about a letter or a card that I got from so-and-so and so-and-so. And of course they knew some of these names are fictitious, but they could put those letters to go and they could tell where I was. And it never got caught.
It's a good thing you were in countries with short names. India, Burma, China. Yeah, that could work. All right. Now, how soon did you start up school then?
Not until I got out in 46.
Yeah.
It was
that fall?
Not until, I guess it was that fall.
Okay. And then did you...
47. It was that fall.
Okay. And did you do any work in between, or...?
I worked with the engineering firm.
Okay. So you went back with them. All right. And then when you went to college, where did you go to college?
North Central College in Naperville, Illinois.
All right.
It's a church-related college. It's a lot different college now than it was when I went there. Very high-tech. It's really amazing how that college has developed. But we were not the first GIs that came back to went into college, but early enough that we were breaking ice, and that they didn't. The college didn't go for dancing, and we had dances out in the street, and we had I'll have to stop there, I guess.
Okay. And then what did you study in college? What did you study, engineering or something
Engineering
else?
science.
All right. And then what kind of career did you go into?
I was a party chief for land surveying, and I did a lot of work on construction work as far as not supervising, but evaluating what the contractors were doing and constructing roads, constructing bridges, and I worked with that engineering firm for 3.5 years, and then I got off onto a tangent, not by design, but I got into public administration. I became an assistant village manager, and I had previously been working with this village on a couple of construction programs that they had, and so I had an opportunity to become assistant to the village manager, and I didn't even know what that kind of work it was, but our neighbor, who was a CPA, he was telling me about the good futures that city managers have. So I figured, well, I could go to work with a village and work for a couple of years, learn what it's like on the other side of the fence, and then come back into engineering, but I never got back.
And what village was that?
Western Springs in Illinois.
All right. Believe it or not, I grew up in Hinsdale, so we were right there. And then how did you wind up in Michigan?
So after I thought maybe I had an opportunity to become village manager at Western Springs, but that didn't work out. So then I started looking, and I became city manager in Buchanan, Michigan, and I was there for 3 years. And then I became city manager of Wyoming, Michigan, and that was when Wyoming first became a city, and I was the first city manager for Wyoming.